Greetings, everybody. I'm Jeremiah.
That's him.
She's Vania.
That's me.
Welcome to another episode of the Beard and Curls podcast, where we discuss dating, relationships, marriage, mental health, and so much more. Today, we have a special guest with us. We're going to be doing a deep dive into millennial dating, amongst other things. Without further ado, cue that intro.
What's up, guys? It's your girl, Margot Bingham.
Karen Parsons.
You're now tuned in.
You're now tuned in.
You are now tuned in.
You are now tuned in
to Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls. Keep it locked.
Our guest today is the Millennial Purpose Coach and host of Maybe UnRelatable podcast. Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So for the people out there who may not be familiar with you or your work, who's Vanessa Victoria?
So Vanessa Victoria is a brand that helps millennial women in their walk of life, wherever they are. And I also have my podcast, Maybe UnRelatable, to where maybe my stories are relatable or not relatable to individuals. So that's what I do. That's who I am.
That's what's up. All right. So then tell us a little bit about the podcast and how that all came about.
Yes. So Maybe UnRelatable came about from a dream. It was most certainly a God-given dream. I had been hearing God telling me to use my voice. And I'm just like, well, I talk every day. I do use my voice. So it's kind of like God was speaking riddles to me. And so I went to sleep. And I oftentimes have dreams. And so this dream, I don't remember the context of it all the way, but I woke up remembering Maybe UnRelatable. And so I was like, oh my God, that would be such a dope podcast. And that's what God was like, yeah, I want you to come out with a podcast or just, something with using your voice and maybe unrelatable. And so at the time, I did not know it was a podcast. At the time, I was just like, okay, use your voice. I have a title, but I don't want to go on YouTube per se because I don't like getting dolled up every single day. And so podcasting is like the new thing now that, even pastors are converting over to. And so that is how I came out with Maybe UnRelatable's podcast.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you said that it was a dream from God. And it made me think about how often people talk about how do you know if it was God or if it was your own imagination? Like I've heard this question a lot. So I was just curious about your experience. Like if you can share a little bit more about how this dream made you feel so convinced.
Absolutely. So it's definitely a question I ask myself on a daily basis, especially with big decisions on like, is this God, is this me, or is this the enemy? And so when that dream came about, I had to ask that question, like, would the enemy tell me would he give me a title? Like, is the enemy ever going to help me out to do something good? Pretty much not ever. And so is this me? It's like, okay, like I have the gift of transparency. I have the gift of blab. So like, is this me? But it's just like what the context of everything that I knew that I would talk about in the podcast would be based off of Christianity and continuing to help women out there, to have guest speakers, just basically to, give back into the world as a positive spirit. And so that's how I came to the confirmation that it was God. I definitely prayed on it a lot. And then and at the beginning, I felt like God was really quiet, or I just wasn't understanding if it was him talking to me or not. But overall, I felt peace.
You talk about a few different things in your podcast. What's the one thing that you love to talk about the most on your podcast?
What you just said, love. So the podcast is on entrepreneurship, it's on careers, it's on relationships, and it's on love. It's on love with significant others, with your friends, with your family, and the love of self.
Okay, awesome. So speaking of love, speaking of dating, how would you define dating?
Oh my gosh. So my definition of dating is, what are you looking to have in a relationship to come, and kind of having suitors that you're talking to, not trying to waste their time or your time, is just trying to see what's a potential good fit for you. And as a woman who is pursuing you, so dating to me is in an innocent fashion of getting to know somebody by having, conversations and not rushing to anything like, do you want to get married now? Or when do you want to have kids? Unless that's just the flow of y'all's, friendship or relationship in the beginning. But that's dating to me, is just getting to know somebody, and then it can grow into courting to where you're kind of just monogamous with that one person.
How long do you think dating should go on?
Oh man, if I can relate it back to my experience in relationships, I think that dating should be you forming a friendship with that person, and perhaps 2 or 3 months.
So from your experience, how easy is it to find people that believe in that definition of dating?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question and such a good question. I learned from my past experiences that I didn't have a list in my head. I should have created a list with a black and white area and a gray area to where I can compromise. And so with that being said, I've entertained individuals that I knew off the bat there was pattern recognition from like previous relationships that this person was giving me, but I thought because it was a different person with a different name, with a different address, they would be different. But the thing is, they had a pattern recognition of the previous person I was dating before I was dating the same type of guy. And it's like I refused to see it. And I also was attracting that to me. So it was something in me that continued to attract this type of person. And so I actually had to take a time of being single for 3 years. And in that 3 years, I just got whole with myself. So when I finally put myself back there with dating and I would talk to, guys, immediately if somebody was like, I want, sex prior to marriage, I'm like, that's a deal breaker for me. Like how, are you, if you're not disciplined right now prior to marriage, then, I don't know how I feel about that. If somebody's not consistently, going to church or have a fellowship or have, good mentors and, Christian friends around them, that's a deal breaker for me too, because who are you being influenced by? So it's like nowadays, or being healthy and knowing me, I know what to look for in a potential suitor.
Can you share with us some of the red flags that you saw or like ignored in those relationships? Because some may be helpful for people that are listening right now that may be going through the same thing.
Oh my gosh. So some of the red flags is somebody that's not able to all the time give you like a direct answer. Maybe they're not always available, or they're always in your space. Or if you, in that 3 months, if you do begin to talk about the future and they're not able to really give you an answer, it's kind of like they're not looking to have anything more than what it currently is.
One of the things I wanted to ask you though is like exactly what you just talked about, like define the relationship, DTR. So like nowadays more than ever, like we find a lot of different things where people are talking about is complicated, or I'm not in a relationship, I'm in a situationship, or we're sort of a thing but not really. And so it's like a lot of confusion, and people don't really know where they stand. So why do you think it's so hard for people to have that conversation as far as like define their relationship?
Immediately when you asked that question, I heard barriers pop into my head and fear. So when you're going into a relationship, you may have just had one and you're trying to rush into one and you're just trying to get over somebody and you're just trying to make this work. And two, you just neglect to have barriers for yourself and you're settling. So it's like you just want what somebody can give you, even if it's not enough, because you're scared to be lonely. You're looking at other people who have what you want, and you're just trying to force things that shouldn't be. So it's like we're neglecting to know ourselves. We're trying to get to know somebody else really quickly, or expectations. Maybe we'll present our expectations and that person kind of shoots them down, or maybe numerous people shoot them down. And so you kind of let that go all the way, like just having expectations and kind of that saying it is what it is. So I think that's why a lot of people end up in situationships, because they just are okay with receiving what they're getting from that person. Like it's enough for them, and it's like you deserve better. But I guess in their head, they don't feel like they deserve better because of a failed past relationship or childhood influences. Like they're trying to get love of some sort, and it's just the wrong time, the wrong person.
I wanted to expound on something you just said as far as the expectations. I think that's significant. So at the end of the day, like you talked about earlier, there's a difference between dating and then courtship and things like that. So when you're dating, you may have certain expectations. So how do you manage those expectations in a way where you don't get ahead of yourself? You don't get too intense with your feelings, but at the same token, you're not wasting your time either. So how do you strike that balance of managing expectations without wasting your time?
So I actually check my expectations at the door when it comes to the beginning of dating, because I can't expect this person and I'm just starting to get to know to have what I'm expecting. I do have standards. And so for expectations and standards to me is two separate things. So standards for me is like a godly man, somebody that's stable, somebody that, you know, has peace within themselves. Expectations is I'm expecting you to call me every single day. You know, you need to have some good communication with. So it's like I kind of check that at the door because I'm just getting to know somebody, and I want to base my expectations on who this person is in total, or else I'm gonna let my own self down too. I'm gonna let myself down. I'm gonna let this person down because I'm putting a lot on their plate, and it's just like I could run off a potential suitor because I have expectations that may not be realistic.
Okay, definitely. I like how you broke that thing down as far as, you know, expectations and standards and things like that. So then how long does it take to develop trust with someone to where you can allow yourself to feel vulnerable with them?
Ooh, I may not be the person for that. So, oh my gosh, I'm that person that like trusts you off the bat. I trust you until I can't trust you. Like if something is proven that I can't. So when I was in my last relationship, there was things that came up that I'm like, this, you know, something doesn't quite seem right about it. But you know what? I'm gonna push it to the side because I'm kind of relating this person to the other person that I used to be with. And that's not fair because I just want to have a relationship where it's healthy and there's trust in it. And if I start like questioning you, then I'm gonna become a nagging individual, and I don't want that. You're dating because you want to have a love in your life, you want to have a courtship, you want to have engagement, and you want to have marriage. And so to have any of those things, you have to first be vulnerable. So you can have like, you know, your guard up, but you have to let your guard down just a little bit to be vulnerable to open up to this person, or else, you know, what's the point of trying to know this person?
I totally can relate to that because I'm like that too. I like to just, you know, treat someone like with love and not have any expectations or anything until they prove me wrong, versus being very suspicious from the beginning.
For sure.
And
She
you?
says that with a big old smile on her face. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you have to let somebody experience you on some level, because that's one of the things that I was making a mistake when I was dating way back when is I think I had to be a certain way. I had to you know, make somebody fall in love with me, if you would call it that, but they didn't get to experience me for the person that I was until, you know, somebody said, hey, I don't know you, you know, I don't know who you are. Like, I can't feel you. And so at some point you have to open up and trust that, hey, at the end of the day, you know, there's nothing I can do if this person chooses to not, you know, return the love or you know, guard my heart, because it's a chance that we take whenever we engage in this game called love. It's about hoping for the best, and then hopefully, you know, it'll pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, I think that we're all actors, you know, we'll go to work, we'll put on the professional voice. I like to call it bilingual. Like, you know, we have like our, you know, slang talk when we're with our families and loved ones, and our professional speech when, you know,
we call it code switching.
I think you're like, you know, when you're getting to know somebody, you're getting to know them in the beginning at surface level, like maybe the best version. You know, people can put on that surface level, but for so long though. That's really good what you're saying. Like, you know what, let me be my organic self, because if I put on and this girl like starts following me, then I'm gonna have to keep putting on, and she's gonna end up, you know, falling for somebody that I'm not even, you know, like you're building this high pinnacle of how you're supposed to be, and you're not even like there. Like, it's just like you have days. But if you always act like you're like high and mighty and have these high up days, and that's just only setting your own self up.
So I wanted to go back to something we talked about earlier about how being in a relationship can be so confusing sometimes, because like the red flags you talked about, like somebody not being emotionally available, only being like present in the moment, but then it seems like the past and the future doesn't really exist. So I wanted to actually ask you, like from a male perspective, why would a guy act like that?
It comes down to somebody who has high character, high morale, and who shares your values, who knows what it is that they want also. And so a lot of the times for guys, and again, I'm not speaking for all guys, but a lot of times guys, correct, I already kind of have a sense of who they want to be with. Like when I met her, I already know, okay, that's gonna be my wife. And one of the things that I said to Guy was, don't let me waste her time. Because I know, like, for me, you could buy anything in this world, but the one thing you cannot buy back is your time. You know, that's the most important thing you can give to somebody. And I knew she was serious. I'm serious. And so even though I know I'm serious, I still want to make it known to God, like, I don't want to waste her time. So I think one of the things that women, you guys can kind of help yourselves out is by being able to ask the guy, not what up with us, not the woo-woo question. Ask him, what are your intentions? And so by being able to ask him directly like that, then you get a sense of, okay, is this guy for real? Does he really want to be with me? And by the way he answers that question, you can kind of have a better sense of, okay, so what can I expect from this person going forward? Because that's not a question that people usually, get asked. And so when you ask somebody that, then that'll basically make them have to sit and think like, okay, so what do I really want to do with this person? Do I really want to be there for them? Do I really want to see myself with them? Or am I, because a guy will tell you whatever you want to hear just to keep wasting your time, just to keep buying more time. He could say one word and that buys him another 6 months. So it's about being able to, again, values, and then also being able to, know what the person's intentions are.
No, I like that. And I think it's great that you're explaining this, because I think that a lot of people need to be more curious to know how men think, like what they need, what they want, how do they behave when they don't want something, and just be curious to learn more about that, not in a judgmental way, but more in a curious way.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, if you know what your values are, and so that's why one of the things that I do with my clients early on in treatment is to start doing the values work. So once you know what your values are, it becomes easier for you to tell somebody, hey, this is what I want from you, because you know what your life is about, because your values are your guiding principles. And so being able to know what those are, and knowing that your time is the one thing you can't buy back, and you're not going to just waste that on anybody, it really helps for the guy to know that, okay, so this is a different situation. Either I'm all in, or I'm going to have to fall back.
Yeah, that's true. And if you ask somebody, what are your intentions? And if they cannot say it, they would be like, you know what I mean? It's like a very clear question. And if they can answer that question, then you kind of like got your answer.
That's real. Because if I'm sitting there getting ready for a date, like he's anticipating this date, and it's like, in that time of you getting ready, like you said, when you found your wife, you knew, like, this is somebody that I want to pursue. And if it's somebody that's just like coming to waste your time or just have you in their space for the time being, they are not going to have an answer for you. I don't think I've ever asked that, but I will in the future. What are your intentions?
And another thing that I wanted to add that I always like to emphasize is that a lot of times women want to know where they stand with a guy, and like knowing the intentions. I think it's really good. But what I wanted to add is that it's important for us, as women, to know what we have to offer to the guy too. Women should value men too. I mean, of course, not everybody is the same, but there are enough quality men out there. Maybe a lot of women have not met them yet, but it's just showing that respect towards that, that I think is valuable as well.
Absolutely. Because if you're a female that is up to no good, and your intentions, the motive in your heart is not good, then you can't go expecting to just meet this amazing guy and you yourself have an underlying ill factor for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, that's just that's not cool. And then I feel some type of way about that. I had a conversation with one of my girlfriends, Jen, on her YouTube. And it's just that, a lot of us women make ourselves to be a choice to these guys. And it's like, that's, we just make ourselves to be a choice. Like, we wait for the men to try to define what it is, or we wait for them to give us a label for then us to be together. It's like, why do we give them choices? And another thing, going back to a female being no good to a guy, I feel like, and I would love to hear your perspective on this. Guys are not able to really verbalize, or they don't necessarily talk about their emotions. They don't talk about their childhood influences so much. As women, we make friends, we could talk about it, we'll get feedback. Guys, they don't really talk about it. You know what I mean? It's just like, you have to be really down and out to talk to your friend about what's going on in your life, or you just like suck it up. You don't cry because you've been taught not to cry. And then you just moving on along with life. And it's just like, this girl that could have been no good for you has hurt you, is now hindering you from truly loving and being vulnerable in the future with somebody that you should be pursuing. So if you can, as a man, talk about like what goes, and I know this is, you can't generalize it for all men, but it's just like when a man is hurt and he's not necessarily getting counseling, how it affects his relationship or potential relationships with others. It's like when men have their guard up, there is like no taking it down. And I mean, that's how situationships happen. They'll get into something, it's like they're so separate from trying to really get into it, but they're giving you their body. Like if they are having relations, they're giving you their time. They're giving you the words that you want to hear. Like you said, you could say one word and they'll keep me along for another 6 months, but it's like something in the piece that's there that you just can't like let down for whatever reason.
All right. No, you made a lot of good points. And it's about being able to, like you say, as a woman, just being able to know, like, what are the things that are important to me? And am I going to allow this person to define me and define this relationship? And then being able to say, I can have, an impact on how this thing plays out. And as far as like the aspect of how guys go about doing things, one of the things that I've learned over the years too is that men hurt equally as much as women hurt. It's just how they cope with it. Maybe sometimes they lack the appropriate coping skills to be able to deal with the hurt that they've experienced. Maybe they were hurt in their nuclear family, or maybe they were hurt in their relationship and they just never really processed that hurt. And so they just kind of carry that around with them. And so a lot of times guys who, sleep around and, they engage in all these kind of different women is a way to cope. It's an unhealthy coping mechanism, but that's a way for them to cope by sleeping around with a lot of different women. And maybe their boys, their core group kind of just like endorses that and say, hey, you're doing your thing. And so in their mind, they're thinking, oh, so I must be on the right path. I must be doing something right. But at some point, it's going to hit them like, wait a minute, I'm still not, there's something that I'm not addressing here. And so at some point, once the guy decides that he no longer wants to continue to live like that, then he's going to maybe seek counseling. He's going to maybe, try to get his life on track, figure out like what's most important to him. Is it God? Is it family? And at that point, that man's going to have a conversion of the heart to be able to say, okay, I've been doing something that doesn't align with who I'm supposed to be. And then at that point, that person may then decide that they want to do right by the people that they meet. But a lot of times it's just poor coping skills of, guys who have been hurt and haven't necessarily had the right support system to be able to eliminate some of these behaviors. So part of that is, people around them not really calling them out on some of these different things. And then again, like you said, environment, like culture, like men are not supposed to cry. Men are not supposed to express emotion. A lot of that is also in play as well, because they're taught that if they do this, then it will reflect a certain way. So all of these different components could contribute to why a man may not always be emotionally available or emotionally present for the person that he's supposed to be present for. So a lot of different moving parts for sure.
Yeah, like that saying says, like, hurt people hurt people. And so it's like you get into this relationship and you have this underlying hurt that you never ever address, and you end up just messing it all up, when you're in a relationship, or going back to expectations, or maybe a pattern recognition with this person. It's kind of like you never dealt with it before in the past. You don't really know how to talk about it. So it just all starts going down, from my experience, downhill from there. What if you do in the dating industry? What if a single woman meets a man and he, like, men always appear very strong, I feel like, right? So say this man went through a divorce and you're meeting him post-divorce a year or so later, but underlying that still hurt him how everything played out, because he, planned on marrying for life, having children, building the house, but it didn't play out. He felt like a failure as a man. So how do you, like, is there anything that can give off of a man that is like unhealthy in that area at all?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, if the person feels like a failure or they feel like they've fallen short, then we're not hitting into something else. We're not getting into like core beliefs. And so, like, where does that stem from? Like, because of that situation not materializing, then somehow he's failed as a man. So being able to like kind of like learn more about the root cause of that, where is that stemming from? That can be able to kind of help you get an inside track into like, okay, so if we could address that part, then maybe he won't feel this way about himself. Maybe he can learn to forgive himself. Maybe he could, develop some self-compassion to where he can be able to say, okay, you know what, this situation didn't materialize, but it's not because I'm not good enough. Maybe there were some, external circumstances or different things that were going on that contributed to that, marriage not surviving. And then being able to like get all of that, get that person to be able to see those things for what they are, and then be able to also understand, like I said, the underlying beliefs, and then being able to challenge whatever thought patterns are coming up as a result of that. That kind of makes them think like, okay, so because of that, then this is more than likely to happen, when maybe those things, have nothing to do with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to separate the reality of the present situation from whatever past situation that he came out of.
But in order to do that, he has to be willing to work on that. He has to be willing to recognize all of that. If he's not willing to do that, then if somebody gets into a relationship with him, then it's still going to be a huge challenge. Like I agree with everything you said.
Right.
But he has to be willing to do the work.
Right. No, I agree with you. And so to kind of make sure that I'm understanding correctly, so like that's a guy who's basically, you can kind of sense, or maybe he's informed you, or he's told you like, hey, I feel like a failure because of this. So you have some level of awareness already that it's tied to that situation. So because of that knowledge, whether it's because you're able to kind of like decipher that, or he's able to share that with you, then it's easier for you to kind of just, again, help him to understand like this is stemming from a core belief that you have about, maybe you believe that marriages are supposed to last forever, which we all agree with. But at the end of the day, maybe in that particular situation, it didn't happen. So does he feel like he's failed his family? Is it something where maybe he's watched his entire generations of family and nobody's had a divorce, and he's the only one who had a divorce? So how does that play into his psyche as far as I must be the problem because nobody else had that situation happen?
I think it's very interesting. Like today we're talking about core beliefs and stuff. I think what you're saying is very important, because if he believes that marriage is supposed to last forever, and versus somebody else who has a failed marriage but never believed that marriage is supposed to last forever, then they have different core beliefs. Exactly. And they may act differently.
Exactly.
So that is the key. Like what is your core belief? And when you can not be synchronized with your core belief anymore, then it's going to have a huge impact.
For sure.
But if your core belief is something different, then it may not have such a big impact. So it depends.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Being that I'm like the single and things of that nature, I think that it's, challenging for a man to open up. That's the vulnerable side of him to ever talk about, past relationships and things of that nature. And so it's like, if a guy is telling you about his ex-girlfriend or his ex-wife or a situation, do you think that's just them being vulnerable, or that they still care for this person, or they're just trying to move forward? Or is it just basically person specific?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And so I think it depends on when that information is coming up. So like if you just went out on one date and he's already talking about that, then I think that's a huge red flag right there. And so I think it really does depend. And so I would say it would be after like maybe a couple of months, like some shared experiences or something like that, where you feel like, okay, we're building something here. There's a possibility here. And so by him being open about that, then that means that he doesn't want that to ever come up later on to where it becomes the problem of, oh, why didn't you tell me this? Or why didn't this come up? So it does take a lot for a man to kind of open up about some of these, like I said, failed relationships and a failed marriage with somebody that he's interested in, because he doesn't want to be judged by that. Because again, maybe tied into his core beliefs. So if at some point, maybe in the courtship that's coming up, when it's appropriate, then I think it's a good thing for him to be able to open up in that way. It shows that he wants to be able to address and acknowledge different things that could potentially be a problem if they're not addressed earlier.
I like that. And I have another thought that I wanted to add to that. Like, for example, like you are a very expressive person, right? You like to be transparent, and your personality is very bubbly. So most likely you're going to be attracted to guys that are more laid back. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah. Okay. 100%.
So you're basically attracted to the opposite of what you are. because you're bubbly and you're attracted to somebody who's more like laid back. And so this person may have different values, you know, while you think that transparency is important and being open is very important and valuable.
Yeah.
Maybe he is more private, and that is one of his values. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's something to take into consideration. Because maybe when you're dating somebody, maybe that person may feel like you shared too soon. For example, you see what I mean? Just because he's used to being private, and sharing a lot may feel overwhelming for him. You see what I mean? So these are just things to like think about and see like what meaning you attach to things and how do you define things. I think that's very important. Like, how do you define things? So how do you define things, and how do you embrace and value each other while still being true to yourself? Right. Because you have to be true to yourself.
I think just like what you're saying though, like when like being that we mirror each other as far as being bubbly and personality and pretty open, you know, to where your significant other is kind of like just more laid back and chill, like, you know, of course the opposite. So I think that's somebody that's really genuinely into you. You're still gonna feel comfortable in whatever context of communication that you have. Like, for instance, my my ex-boyfriend, 100% like very laid back and chill, but I appreciated him letting me talk out all of my thoughts or what I had going on. And my ex actually had this way of never giving me a biased feedback. It was just like playing both sides of the road. And I like that he made me feel comfortable as far as like talking about anything under the sun. And I felt like his feedback was enough to make me come to a decision, even though it was unbiased on his part. And I think, you know, for us bubbly women, you know, that guy that may be laid back just has to, you know, it just has to be a good chemistry and good communication, of course, because if you have good communication, it doesn't matter how different you are with personalities, it's just going to mesh well because you're able to, you know, have that communication.
Right. And then to that point, like, as far as like, you know, you guys being bubbly women and that guy who's more laid back, at the end of the day, his social personality is going to be different than his relationship personality. So when he's with you, you're going to get to see things that others don't always get to see because he's going to have a certain energy that he has with you where he's able to be more expressive. So to that point, to going back to your previous point, so if a guy like that who's laid back, which is your preference, is still able to share some of these things with you, then that kind of lets you know right there that there's a certain level of comfort that he has with you to be able to share some of these things that he may not always be willing to share because he's a private person to begin with. So I think that would actually speak, you know, volumes if he were able to share some of these things at the appropriate time, that is.
Yeah, and if he's ready.
Right.
Because I believe that, like, for example, in our situation, you were ready. So you were able to open up and just be yourself. So I never felt like you were trying to be private with me personally. But I do feel like you are more of a private person in general, like when it comes to like talking about things with other people and stuff. But imagine you were not ready for a relationship and then we started talking.
Exactly.
Then I think you wouldn't have been as open.
That's very true. Very true. It's about timing.
So I have a question for the two of you. So your husband mentioned earlier that you knew when you met her that this is wifey, like this is or was it after a couple of conversations and, you know, get-togethers, did you feel that way? And then the same thing for you. Did you feel like that soft, still voice was like, this is your husband?
Well, I just kind of just share from my vantage point, like the moment I saw her, I'm like, that's my future wife right there. I just knew it. And so it was some energy, some vibe that was just like penetrating, you know, through the screen where I'm like, wow, there's something unique here. And whatever I'm going to do, I need to do it quickly because she looks like she's a good woman who comes from good stock. I need to act quickly. And so, and so it was just one of those things that you just know as a guy, for the most part, when you meet that person that you believe is the one for you, you just kind of have that sense like, this is it. And I just need to act accordingly. And like she said, I was ready. And so maybe like we talked about, like if we would have met each other maybe 10 years earlier, maybe we'd have been in different places in our lives. She was out there traveling the world. and I was still trying to figure life out. So maybe it wouldn't have been the right situation. We would have probably ended up not being together. But at that moment, we were both ready and we knew what we wanted. And so it was just a matter of being able to just, get familiar with one another and then kind of go from there.
Okay, so when I saw him, like, he blew my mind with what he wrote on the profile, and also when I saw his picture, like the depth in his eyes was so intense. It's almost like I was looking at him like as if he was a person, like real.
Yeah.
So that made a huge impact on me. And then when I read in his profile, he basically described exactly the type of person that he was looking for. And normally people, well, at least from my experience, when I would read profiles, people would say the things that they like or the things that they are about themselves. But I've never seen somebody describing it like so well. All the things that he wanted, it's like as if he was describing me. So I was like, I can't believe it. So that was my experience. So I felt very convinced right away. I must say that one thing that I did struggle a little bit with is letting go of being single. Just because, like he mentioned, like I enjoy traveling a lot. I enjoy that freedom of just doing spontaneous thing. So I had a little bit of fear of how my life would change once being married, just because I was so I was living a purposeful single life. But again, when you meet the right person, it's all worth it. So I'm glad I didn't allow that fear to interfere, and he kind of like helped me with that.
To that point, to add to that, is one of the things that we always talked about early on is being able to add value to somebody. That was one of the terms that kept floating around. Like she would always say, whoever you're supposed to be with, that person is supposed to add value to your life. And we both felt without a doubt that we were going to add value to the other person's life. And so that's what kind of like what she was talking about earlier. A lot of times people have a checklist or things that they want from somebody, but then they don't take into account, like, what am I adding to that other person? How am I making their lives better? Because at the end of the day, one thing she said to me on our wedding day was, I could reach my full potential in life with you. And I never forgot that, because to me, it's like,
shivers. That was
he never forgot it. Like he still
and that was off the cuff. That wasn't like something she wrote down. It was more like she knew, like, I can be the best version of myself with this. If you can't see that with somebody else that you're entertaining or that you're considering, then that should already let you know, like, okay, maybe I need to think about something else, because I can't see me becoming the person that I know I can be, the person that God wants me to be with this person right here.
Wow. That literally gave me shivers for like 3 minutes. Like, that is cool. Because I understand exactly what you're saying. It's not like you're looking for somebody to make you feel complete, but it's just like, yeah, when you do have that, that's what God made, Adam and Eve, like to go out into the world, to be a power couple, basically. So I love that you guys were both like in the wholeness of being single, you know what I mean? And kind of like met each other when you was ready to meet each other. So that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful what you told him on your wedding day, because I felt that. Like, I literally felt what you said. Like, now I can reach my fullest potential. Not that you wasn't reaching it before, but the new story that you was embarking on together for the purpose that you had was like, now we're about to kill it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm so grateful. And I thank God that I can have somebody that is my match. And that's why when I share this story, it's more than just a love story. It's about hopefully inspiring people that it is possible, that you have to first live a purposeful life, like on your own. Have like, go on that journey, find joy, find purpose, find your strengths, your talents, your gifts. It's so important, because when you come together, it's like a puzzle, eating
Fireworks.
Yeah, fireworks. So I'm definitely very, very grateful, because for me it's bigger. It's about doing God's work. It's about impacting people. It's not just about being in love and just you and I. We want to do great things together. Yeah. So I'm very thankful.
There's more to marriage than love and kissing and doing all the things that you do in marriage. It's like you still have to have like this friendship with that person, because like it's way beyond, oh, I have somebody I can hug. And it's just like, I think a lot of women are just failing at that, like are settling, wanting to get married just to say they have a ring on their finger and they know they shouldn't be with this person. They're not fulfilled. They rush to the single stage. And then they do get married to somebody that's good, and now they're wanting to go do single things while they're married. And that's why, like, I love that you guys both had that phase to where you experienced your singleness to the fullest and was very happy in it. And then you was like, all right, I want to like somebody. I want to love somebody. Let me go ahead and, put myself out there, and voila.
Exactly. And to that point too, Vanessa, it's like another thing too is a lot of times these things happen when you least expect them. Like then you're busy living, you have everything that you're trying to do and you're just focused on that. And then before you know it, somebody comes along who's equally prepared and ready doing their thing, and they'll see what you're doing and they'll take an interest and they'll take a liking to what you're doing because it'll be that exciting that they'll want to be a part of it. And those are the kind of people who will naturally find their way into your life, when the time is right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember again, my relationship was like, it ended February. So I'm like I'm in that stage where I'm getting over it, but it's not all the way.
Right. And so to that point, like, having gone through some of these breakups and stuff like that. So how do you kind of find your voice after dealing with, trauma or loss or difficult situation or breakup? How do you find your voice?
What's that saying? God's rejection, or rejection is God's protection. Mm-hmm. I was just like, if God didn't want this person to be in my life, like, yeah, I'm gonna try to fight for this. But if it's so much traction, that just means that there's something that can't be resolved. Like, this is unresolvable. That means maybe I was idolizing this person. It was a reason why God did not want me in this relationship. So God, I repent. I'm gonna start journaling. And that's how, like, I dealt with, I guess, grief of a heartbreak with that particular situation. Because I knew myself, I always said that I would not predicate my happiness on a person. So getting out of it was not easy, but it wasn't like, oh, my happiness like was left with this person, because I never put my happiness on this man. What made it a harder heartbreak, however, is like 3 weeks prior to our us breaking up, my mom passed away. So it was like, I have a heartbreak that from somebody I would never see again until I go to heaven. And then 3 weeks later, it's like this unexpected, like I wasn't expecting this relationship to. At this point, I'm dealing with 2 heartbreaks: heartbreak from a person that's here and a heartbreak from a person that is no longer here, my mom and my significant other. So I'm like, God, like, I know this is like the season of transitions, but like my wound from this other heartbreak is not even like closed yet. And like, there's this other thing. So that's how I knew it had to have been God. Like, just, I guess better now with my mom, passing, being fresh than far along to where I'm about to get married to the wrong person, or, you know what I mean? So it's just like, we don't know why bad things happen or things that we don't like happen, but all we can do is just truly trust God and just go on with life in a healthy manner. So that's what I'm doing. And day by day, I personally get better versus sitting with negative thoughts, because they do come. Like, I can get negative. There can be, voices in my ear from the enemy trying to have me focus on stuff like, this happened to you and that happened to you, or you're not loved, those negative voices. And it's just like, I don't believe that. Like, I just refuse to believe that. You know what I mean?
No, that's powerful. I mean, you share real things and you're still able to have a positive attitude and still have that peacefulness about you. So I appreciate you sharing all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. In the months following, it definitely has been like a lesson that I'm continuing to learn. Like, okay, God, all this stuff happening, what am I to get from this? And I still don't know, but I still have my joy and my peace every single day. And I'm so thankful for that. And I have my moments, honestly, like I have my moments of grief because, it's up and down. Some days are great, some days are not. But at the end of the day, I love that I can still have peace and I still have God to come to with presenting all my cares to him and continuing on.
I think it's so powerful. Like when I saw you going through these experiences, I'm like, wow, where do you get the strength? Like, obviously you're hurting, yes, but I still feel like you project so much strength. And by hearing you sharing your testimony right now, like only God can give that kind of strength and peace. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing that you're able to share this with others that may be going through the same thing, be a comfort to them.
For sure. We touched on a lot of different things, Vanessa. So where can somebody find you online if they want to get in contact with you, they want to connect with you? How can people find you online?
Yes, so I am a huge proponent of Instagram. They can find me on my Instagram. I am Vanessa Victoria, which is also where I have my link tree, and they can find the link to go straight to Maybe UnRelatable and all the different avenues of listening to Maybe UnRelatable if they want to. If not, I accept direct messaging. I'm pretty prompt on answering those. So that's where they can find me. I am Vanessa Victoria.
Awesome.
Okay,
all right.
awesome.
Well, we definitely appreciate you taking the time and, coming on here and dropping all this knowledge with us. Then continue success in your podcast, and let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Well, there you have it. That's our show for today. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. And as always, like it or not, Beard and Curls is the new his and hers.